Hi there, I am Pauletta Hansel again with the Urban Appalachian Community Coalition Story Gathering Project. And I'm very excited today to have a conversation to share with you with my friend, the poet, Sara Moore Wagner. Welcome, Sara. Would you, even though I have just said it, say your full name and also where you're living now?
My name is Sara Moore Wagner, and I'm living in Westchester, Ohio.
Great, thank you. And so talk to us, if you will, about where you were born and where you grew up and what it was like for you there.
Sure. I was born in Columbus, Ohio, on the west side. I was born to two teenage parents who had just, gotten together. My mom, and it's kind of my mom was in college at the time and she dropped out, and my dad had dropped out of high school and was at 17 working a bar, kind of this hillbilly rebel they called him a pretty boy, my Mima likes to say. So
and not in the best possible sense of the word, I take it.
Yeah, he was a schmoozer and a trickster type guy, but he and my mom got together and they got married, and they had a really tumultuous, they had me and my brother, and had a pretty tumultuous marriage, and they divorced when I was 2 and my brother was 1. And so then my mom, we were homeless for a little bit. She was really trying to make a life for us working. She worked at Kmart, where she let me be a Kmart model, which is one of my favorite memories. And she, had a lot of waitressing jobs, and his mother, who I call Mima, she was the one who watched me while my mom was at work and did my hair and nails and things like that. Yeah. So, but she lived, eventually she bought a little house in Galloway, which is kind of right off the west side. Mm-hmm. And my dad's family lived in the Hilltop area, which is right by the city. And it's kind of more impoverished than Galloway, which Galloway is too. But my mom, when I was 5, she went back to college at Ohio State. And so I would go and sit in her classes with her, or I'd be with Mima. And then during my childhood, there was a lot of, custody disagreements and things like that. I spent half my time with my dad, half my time with my mom. And then eventually when I was 12, my mom, her father gave her a portion of his bottled water company to run in Cincinnati. Mm-hmm. So then we moved here, and our lives kind of changed to being the suburb life, but I would still spend half my time going back to my dad's in Columbus and Hilltop. So I was kind of split between those two worlds at that point.
So what neighborhood in Cincinnati once you moved here? What
Westchester.
Okay, so where you are now, right?
Yeah.
So you haven't moved too far from there.
Right.
So what kind of girl were you? What did you like to do? What were your favorite subjects in school, or your favorite things to do when you got home?
Yeah, I was kind of a really shy kid. I think I'm still kind of shy, but I liked writing even back then. So I would write plays that I would make, my siblings and the neighborhood kids be a part of. And we had a train track that went right behind our house too. So we would go and just walk the train tracks and play make believe. And I was very into the imaginative. I was daydreamy, they would say. So I didn't get the best grades in school. It wasn't the best school that I went to either, being in the neighborhoods that we were from. It was not a great school. So I think I was kind of behind and in the clouds and my own island in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Well, I'm wondering, since it sounds like your mom really struggled to be able to make sure she finished her college education. Was she on you about the school grades? I mean, was education important in your family in a way?
It was to her. It wasn't as much. It was the opposite to my dad. So she really wanted me to be something and really would read to me. so I struggled with, even through high school, I struggled with my grades. And she was always, trying to get me there, trying to get me into college, trying to tell me the things I needed to do. I went to a private school for high school, a college prep, so that I could be, she really sacrificed a lot to send me there to kind of get me on that road to college, even though I was really bulking against that. And my dad, on the other hand, when I got he didn't go to any of my college graduations. And when I got my bachelor's, I told him like, oh, I got my bachelor's. And he was like, well, one of my friends, their kid got an associate's. So, and it was, yeah. And after my freshman year of college, I went and lived with him afterwards, just because I thought, I'd have more freedom, and I was wild. And he really, really was wanting me to not go back to college at all. He thought it was a waste of time. So I had two magnets pulling me in two ways.
Sounds like your mom won in the end, though.
Yes.
Because I know Sara has her is it master's or MFA in
master's
in creative writing from Northern Kentucky University.
Yeah.
So where were your parents' families from? And I'm wondering if you had any relationship to those places. I mean, I know you had relationship with your Mima in Columbus, but I'm also just curious about sort of the wider family homes.
Sure. Yeah. My mom gets really mad. As I said, she's fought so hard, and she says all I do is identify with my dad's family. So she gets, but I think that's because of Mima. And I've always felt, she helped raise me. So I felt very connected to her. And she and her husband, my Paul, are from Jackson, Ohio area, which is kind of the foothills of Appalachia. And I spent a lot of my time in Tar Hollow State Park. That was my dad's favorite place to be, was in Tar Hollow. And actually he died a few months ago, and I'm going to spread his ashes there because that's just where he loved to be. So he was very connected to where he came from. And so was my Paul, my grandfather. He was there all the time. His siblings were still there. Mima, her siblings are in Centerville, which Tar Hollow is kind of in the middle of Centerville and Jackson area. They're both kind of foothills. So she's from that area, and she talks a lot about how country it was, how she was called Blue Bonnet Sue when she was little. It's very kind of, she talks, my grandpa, who I called Paul, he lived in like a little shack with like 100 siblings and an outdoor toy. Both of them had outdoor toy. I hear all kinds of stories about where they come from. But we went to Jackson a lot when I was little, which is funny because you're from Jackson, Kentucky.
That's right.
Jackson,
Ohio. Yeah.
and they seem kind of similar in some ways, maybe, but
I think Jackson, Ohio is bigger, actually.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. Another poet, Darby Lyons, her family's from Jackson too. So we went there together, actually, on a ride. While I was writing Hillbilly Madonna, we went and stayed in a hotel. And her family are like the rich people in Jackson. And I had never been to like the city center. Whenever I went to Jackson, it was just the hills and the tiny little houses that my family lives in. We would do things like eat squirrel gravy, and her family we're like going to restaurants and things.
Yeah, so there's sort of the two sides of the Ohio Appalachian.
Yeah, but my mom's family, she left West Virginia because of a big tragedy, because of the murder of her mother and grandmother by her grandfather. So she was her parents were divorced. So she was suddenly uprooted from West Virginia and left with her father, who was in Columbus, who she didn't have much of a relationship with until that point. So then once she got to Columbus, I think she got a little bit disconnected from her own West Virginia roots. So she's been trying to research that a lot more. And there's a lot of complicated feelings there between all of that. So I didn't bond as much with her extended family as my dad's.
Well, you may be finding out, sounds like you might be finding out more about that side as your mother continues her research.
Yes.
So she also migrated to Columbus, but then what did her father come to Cincinnati, or did she bring the bottled water company to Cincinnati?
Just she did.
Okay.
So the bottled water company was out of Columbus.
Got it.
And so he has a spring that he owns somewhere. I think it's in the
Yeah.
West somewhere. But my mom has 3 sisters. So one of the sisters went to Dayton, which she still runs that water company in Dayton. And
Okay.
then my mom was given after she graduated college and got her life together, was given the Cincinnati branch of that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
mhm.
So that's how you got here, was
Yes.
through your mother as opposed to through family connections.
Mhm.
So did your family, your parents, either side of them use words like Appalachian or mountain people to describe yourselves when you were growing up, or hillbilly or country? It sounds
Hillbilly,
like.
yes.
Yeah.
Hillbilly, country. I don't think they ever, my mom, I remember because my mom and I, she moved to North Carolina now, but for a long time we would go to the Appalachian Festival, which I know is happening here soon.
Yeah.
Every year on Mother's Day, we
Okay.
would go together from the time my son was born, probably until she moved. And I remember her being like, why do they say Appalachian? Because we always said Appalachian. Like it was
Yeah.
very, and then even when, I've started to do this stuff with my book, Hillbilly Madonna, she says, don't make me seem like a hillbilly. She's very much like, your dad's a hillbilly. I'm not a hillbilly,
Yeah.
So
What do you think she meant by that?
I think she just sees it in the same stereotypical way. I mean, because my dad is he embraces he embraced a lot of the stereotypes of what it's like the hillbilly culture.
Mhm.
He embodied that in a lot of ways. It was pride for him.
Mhm.
And I think because her dislike of him, she deeply wanted to be separated from that identity. She didn't want any part of it, really.
Yeah. And do you have any sense of why your father embraced what I think he probably would have called the hillbilly
Oh,
culture
yes.
versus
Oh, yes.
Appalachian culture? Do you have any
Mhm.
idea why he was so drawn to that particular manifestation of it?
I think when they moved, so my grandparents moved to Columbus when he was a late, not a late teen, because that's when he had me, kind of like a mid-teen. And he loved being in the country. He loved hunting. He loved he would build dune buggies or rail buggies out of like pipes and just run through the mud in them. It was just, he loved hunting. He called himself the Turkey King because he would hunt turkeys, and he made these elaborate turkey wreaths. One of them, my brother took it. It's like an elaborate turkey wreath where he cut a log and shellacked a picture of him with the dead turkey in the center of the turkey wreath. And he would make turkey wing bone whistles too, it just, the woods was where he loved to be. He loved to be hunting. It was just something inside of him. And he lived in kind of inner city-ish type environment, but he still raised turkeys and chickens and lived that country lifestyle even in the city. So
And how about you? Do you use any of these terms to describe yourself, or do you see yourself as having a direct connection in any way with either Appalachian culture, or as your father would define it, hillbilly culture?
yeah, I mean, yeah, because in some ways I feel split, because my mom is so like, stand up straight, be polite,
Mhm.
get your education,
Yeah.
which I think is a hillbilly culture too, as
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
And so which I know now, like I can be that and that. It's not just one thing or the other, as she believes, and I think as he believed in some ways. And even as a lot of my family, when my dad died, we went to his house to clear it out, and I was kind of horrified by a lot of the things that were happening. Because everybody had guns, and my dad had a lot of guns, and they were, holding them and waving them around, and there were all these people in his yard. And so I would go outside, and my aunt would laugh at me like, oh, Sarah, this is what hillbillies do. Like, you're become like your mom, you're too fancy, And so I think part of me I've been told I'm both. I went to college and people were like, oh, you're just a hick, People would say like, my name's Sara, even though I don't talk like that. I think some of my accent, I did have a little bit of a more, hillbilly accent before, but people who are really kind of in Northern Ohio, where I went to college, would notice and see me as that. And so I think in some ways I have embraced it. And then I think I'm learning more to embrace it, and that you can be both.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean one thing or the other.
And any thoughts about how that bothness might have contributed in a positive way to who you are now?
Oh, sure. Yeah. I think definitely my mom's drive. And this is something I address in Hillbilly Madonna a lot, which is the book I have coming out soon, is that idea that I come from this rich place, and my mother is, someone who encouraged me on the path to not being a person who didn't want something for myself, who didn't rise up out of things. But then also, I have the history and connection to my dad's family that I value. It's like this connection of family and love and identity that she does not want anything to do with, in a lot of ways. But I value where my Mima especially, she's so kind-hearted and also feisty, and I appreciate, her takes on things, her humor, and yeah.
Well, and I'm glad you mentioned Hillbilly Madonna, which I know is coming out in November from Driftwood Press. I'm very excited for this new book. And will you just say a little bit about the book before we end?
Sure. So Hillbilly Madonna is an exploration of my youth, and in particularly it's an exploration of my father's landscape. I wanted to understand just kind of what we were talking about, what draws him so much to his identity and to his landscape, and how much of that is in me, how much of him in that way is in me. And it also deals a lot with drugs and opioids, which are present in the community, which I also struggled a little with drugs when I was younger and in college and a little bit beyond that. But I was able to not fall into addiction, whereas so many of the girls I grew up with and so many people that I was exactly the same as did fall into addiction. And so it's kind of that exploration of what does it mean to be someone who can rise above, and what does it take to what's the difference there between someone who can, and really I don't think there is much difference except having someone who pulls you out, which I was lucky and privileged enough to have. So that it's kind of my exploration of that.
Yeah, I'm so excited for this book. I've been wanting for so many years to see some really authentic first-person accounts of people's urban Appalachian experiences, and I love your writing, and I know that the book will be very powerful. So thank you for writing it and for sharing a little bit about it with us. And you can be sure that that when the book is out, that the Urban Appalachian Community Coalition will help spread the word and help get Sara's poems out into our community as well.
Thank
So,
you.
Sara, is there anything else that you'd like to tell me that you haven't had a chance to talk about?
I think so. Just that Hillbilly Madonna will come out November 15th. So
Excellent. Well, we'll be looking for it. Well, thank you, Sara Moore Wagner. We have been excited to have you be part of the Urban Appalachian Story Gathering Project, and I look forward to talking to you again soon.
Thanks.